The Galactic Council chambers stood suspended above the neutral planet Veridan, a towering structure of shimmering glass and polished metal. Its vast expanse housed representatives from hundreds of alien species, each with their own unique customs, languages, and agendas. It was here that the fate of the galaxy would be decided, or so they believed. The human delegation, led by Captain Alexis Morrow, stood at the heart of this political theater, surrounded by towering beings with skin like polished stone, reptilian eyes, and mechanical limbs. The room buzzed with the low murmur of alien tongues, the air thick with unspoken tension. Alexis surveyed the room, her sharp blue eyes scanning the faces of the council members. She could feel their eyes on her people, assessing, judging. She adjusted her dark, military jacket, standing tall with her back straight. Her brown hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, a testament to her disciplined nature. At 35, she was young for a diplomat in human circles, but her reputation had preceded her, quick-witted, sharp as a knife, and relentlessly protective of humanity's interests. Today, she was here to ensure that humanity wasn't treated like an insignificant afterthought. Across from her sat the Zorathian delegation, their leader, High Counselor Tax Dravak, watching her with cold, calculating eyes. The Zorathians were known for their brutal pragmatism, and Dravak, in particular, was a master of manipulation. His species had long dominated the galactic order, and their reputation was one of merciless strategy. Dravak had the air of a predator, always circling, always waiting for a weakness. Captain Morrow, Dravak began, his voice smooth, like a blade sliding across stone. I trust your species has come prepared to finally accept the terms of the Treaty of Galvak. The peacekeeping forces we've outlined are more than generous. His words hung in the air, dripping with condescension. Alexis clenched her jaw but kept her expression neutral. The Treaty of Galvak had been designed with the intention of placing humanity under the watchful eye of the Galactic Council, limiting their military capabilities and enforcing strict oversight. It was a thinly veiled attempt to curb humanity's rapid rise in power, a rise the Council feared. We've reviewed the terms, Alexis replied, her voice even but firm. And we have concerns, Counselor. Our military is not to be restricted by your arbitrary mandates. Humanity's strength is what ensures our survival. We don't need oversight. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The Zorathian delegation exchanged glances, their eyes narrowing. Dravak's lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Your strength, he said slowly, is why you are here today, Captain. You are in this chamber not because of your prowess, but because of our patience. We are extending our hand in peace, not weakness. A low hum of agreement rippled through the room. Other species, less vocal but no less influential, nodded along. Humans had always been the outliers, the unpredictable variable in the galactic equation. Where others relied on calculated diplomacy, humanity thrived on innovation, risk, and, when necessary, brute force. But the Council saw this as instability, a dangerous variable that threatened their carefully constructed order. Alexis didn't flinch. You extend your hand in peace, yes. But only after you've tied our wrists behind our backs. The words were sharp, but she knew they needed to be. The Council had underestimated humanity for too long. It was time they understood that the human race would no longer bend to their will. High Counselor Tax Dravak leaned back in his seat, his reptilian eyes never leaving her face. You misunderstand, Captain. The treaty is about ensuring stability, not subjugation. There are others in this room who share my views. His gaze flicked toward the Arctalians, their massive, biomechanical bodies sitting at a table across from the humans. Their leader, a towering figure covered in gleaming armor, nodded in agreement. You cannot deny the growing influence of the Arctalian Empire, Dravak continued, his tone colder now. If humanity continues to act recklessly, you will force us all into a conflict that will not end in your favor. The room held its breath as the threat settled into the air. It was a subtle one, but it was there, nonetheless. Dravak wasn't just trying to negotiate, he was trying to intimidate. And it was working. The other species watched, waiting for Alexis to respond. Alexis' fingers twitched at her side. She was aware of every set of eyes on her, every alien species measuring her every move. She had been trained for moments like this, moments when diplomacy and pride collided. She knew what was at stake. But she also knew humanity's value, their potential, and she was not about to let anyone forget it. "You speak of stability, Counselor," she said slowly, "but what you're asking is for humanity to kneel, to accept a future where our growth is stunted by fear. You are asking us to be dependent on your protection. We will not be your subjects." Her words echoed through the chamber, and the murmurs of agreement from the human delegation were swift. A few of the other species looked uneasy. They had expected a softer response, a more compliant approach from the humans, but Alexis had made it clear, the human race would no longer be silenced by threats or promises of peace at the cost of their freedom. Dravak's expression shifted, the mask of politeness slipping for just a moment. "You misinterpret our offer, Captain," he said, his voice now tinged with frustration. "We are simply trying to prevent disaster. You've seen the rise of the Arctalians. You know that war is coming." "I've seen the Arctalians," Alexis responded, her voice unwavering. "And we'll face them on our terms, not yours." For a moment, the room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The council members shifted in their seats, exchanging wary glances. They had expected resistance, but this level of defiance was unexpected. The humans had been unpredictable before, but Alexis Morrow was something else. She was not just a diplomat, she was a force in her own right. Dravak opened his mouth to respond, but Alexis was already rising from her seat, her eyes locking with his. "The human delegation will not sign the Treaty of Galvik in its current form. We're done here," she said, her voice cold and final. The shock was palpable. A few of the other species glanced nervously at each other, unsure of how to react. The human delegation stood behind Alexis, their posture solid, unwavering. "We'll be leaving now," Alexis added, her gaze sweeping the room. "You'll have to find another way to handle humanity." With that, the human delegation turned and walked toward the exit, leaving a stunned silence in their wake. As the massive doors of the council chamber closed behind them, Alexis allowed herself a moment to breathe. They had made their point, but the consequences were yet to come. And deep down, she knew the worst was still ahead. The hum of the ship's engines was a constant, a low vibration that ran through the bones of the Saratoga as it drifted further from the Verdun system. The stars outside were nothing but distant pinpricks of light, the vastness of space stretching out in every direction. Inside the bridge, the human delegation was silent, save for the quiet murmur of communications officers speaking in clipped tones. Captain Alexis Morrow stood at the front, hands clasped behind her back, staring out through the reinforced glass of the bridge. The dark void of space reflected her image, framed by the endless expanse of stars. The peace talks were supposed to be a breakthrough, a chance to end the escalating tensions, to settle the uneasy peace between humanity and the Galactic Council. Instead, they had fractured beyond repair. "We should have held firm," Alexis muttered, her voice barely a whisper. Her gaze flickered to the crew around her, watching them as they worked, doing their jobs without question. Her instincts screamed at her to take the next step, to make the Council regret their treatment of humanity. "Captain, the Council is requesting an emergency communication," Lieutenant Mendez's voice cut through the silence, the calm professionalism in his tone a stark contrast to Alexis's simmering frustration. Alexis turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "Let them wait." Mendez hesitated, his brow furrowing. "They're offering a chance for further negotiation. High Counselor Dravak is demanding an audience." A flicker of annoyance crossed Alexis's face. "Tell them we've already spoken. No more games." Her voice carried the weight of authority, but the truth was, she wasn't sure if she wanted to talk to them again. Each word from the Zorathians had been a dagger wrapped in polite words, their offer of peace tainted by the undercurrent of control. Humanity was not a pawn to be moved on their chessboard. "We'll handle this in our own way," Alexis continued, turning back to the viewport. "Prepare the fleet. I want every ship ready to move at a moment's notice." She didn't need to say anything more. Mendez understood immediately, his nod brisk as he turned to relay the orders. The bridge fell into its usual rhythm, the crew resuming their tasks with practiced efficiency. The decision was made. The humans weren't going back to the table. They had walked out of the Galactic Council, but the next phase had begun. They would take their message to the galaxy. "Captain," a voice called from behind her. It was Lieutenant Nova, the communications officer. "I'm picking up a transmission from the Arctalian Empire. They want to speak with you." The Arctalians. Alexis had heard whispers about them during the talks. Their empire, vast and technologically advanced, had remained neutral during the peace negotiations. Many of the council members were privately uneasy about the Arctalians' growing influence. She could guess why they were reaching out now. "Patch it through," Alexis ordered. A moment later, a holographic figure appeared in front of her. The Arctalian envoy, an imposing figure covered in gleaming silver armor, stepped forward. His face was hidden beneath a helmet, but his posture radiated authority. "Captain Morrow," the Arctalian voice resonated, deep and commanding. "I trust your departure from the council is not a sign of hostility. We merely wish to ensure that your intentions are clear." Alexis folded her arms, studying the envoy. The Arctalians weren't known for small talk, and this wasn't the first time they had shown interest in human affairs. "Our intentions are simple," she said, her voice steady. "We won't allow our future to be dictated by the council or anyone else. Humanity will stand on its own terms, and if the galaxy doesn't respect that, we'll make them." The Arctalian's helmet tilted slightly, as if considering her words. A bold statement. And one that could bring about change. However, there are factions in this galaxy that thrive on chaos. If the council fails to control you, others may attempt to. I'm not worried about others. Alexis's voice was firm, her eyes narrowing. I'm more concerned about what the council plans to do next. The Arctalian envoy paused, the silence stretching out before he responded. Perhaps you should be. There are whispers of a different path for the council, one that doesn't involve simply holding you back. The Zorathians are not the only ones with influence. The words hit harder than Alexis expected. The Arctalians were a powerhouse, their military might enough to shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Their message wasn't just idle chatter, it was a warning. If that's a threat, Alexis began, you'll find humanity ready for whatever comes next. The envoy's image flickered for a moment, the holographic transmission stabilizing again. It is not a threat, Captain, but a reality. Consider carefully where you stand. If you are willing to face the consequences, then we shall see how far your resolve stretches. The transmission ended abruptly. Alexis stood, staring at the flickering image in front of her. She exhaled slowly, her thoughts swirling. The council was dangerous enough, but now the Arctalians, an empire that had remained distant, were taking an interest. And their message was clear, this wouldn't be easy. A voice behind her broke the silence. It was Commander Harris, the ship's tactical officer. "Captain, the Zorathians are moving their fleet. They're making a show of force, likely as a response to our departure." Alexis turned to face him. His expression was unreadable, but she could see the tension in his posture. The situation was escalating, and they were rapidly running out of time. "Prepare the fleet," she said, her voice hard as iron. "We'll show them exactly what happens when you underestimate humanity." Harris nodded and turned to relay the orders. Alexis knew that walking away from the talks had been a risky move, but it was one she believed in. The Council and the Zorathians had expected humanity to bend. They had believed that fear and threats would force them into submission. But Alexis had learned one thing during her years in the service: humanity didn't bend. They fought. And in the face of overwhelming odds, they would rise. "Captain, we've just received a transmission from the Council," Lieutenant Mendez called out again. "They're requesting you return. They've revised their offer." Alexis hesitated, her mind racing. This wasn't just a matter of diplomacy anymore. The Zorathians had made their move, the Arctalians had issued their warning, and now the Council was coming back with an offer. She had walked out once. Would they really expect her to go back now, after everything that had been said? After the challenge had been made? No, Alexis said, shaking her head firmly. Tell them we're not coming back. Humanity doesn't negotiate from a position of weakness. We'll fight for our place in the galaxy, not beg for it. The bridge crew fell silent as her words hung in the air. It was no longer about peace talks. It was about humanity's future. The next steps were set. And no matter what happened, they were not going to back down. The bridge of the Saratoga had never been so silent. The hum of the engines, usually a comforting sound, felt cold now. Alexis Morrow stood at the viewport, her eyes fixed on the stars beyond. The Zorathian fleet had moved, its ships shifting position on the galactic grid, and with the Arctalians watching closely, humanity's position was precarious. The moment of truth was fast approaching. Captain, Lieutenant Mendez's voice cut through the silence. We've received another transmission, this time from the Zorathian fleet. They want to negotiate, again. Alexis didn't move, her face hard as stone. And what makes them think we'll listen now? Apparently, they've reconsidered their position. They say there's been a shift in the Council's stance, Mendez replied, his tone uncertain. They're offering more favorable terms this time. Alexis turned slowly, her eyes locking onto the lieutenant. Favorable terms, she repeated, her voice sharp. Do they think we're that easily swayed? Her gaze flicked to the rest of the bridge crew, each one absorbed in their work. They had all seen the tension rise over the past few days, knew the stakes as well as she did. But she couldn't afford to play the Zorathian game anymore. Not when every offer came with strings attached. No, Alexis muttered, shaking her head. We're not playing their game. Captain, Commander Harris spoke up, his voice firm, it might be worth listening. If the Council is making a real change, we should at least hear them out. We could end up saving lives. Alexis met his gaze, his concern for the crew palpable. She understood his reasoning, but this wasn't just about saving lives, it was about more than that. It was about ensuring humanity's place in the galaxy, not as a pawn, but as a force to be reckoned with. She took a slow breath. We'll listen, she said, her voice colder than before. But we set the terms this time. They'll have to understand that. The Zorathian fleet was still positioned just outside of the Saratoga's range, a massive armada that stretched across the void. The sheer scale of their ships was enough to make any commander think twice, but Alexis had learned long ago that size meant nothing if you had the will to stand firm. The comms officer, Lieutenant Nova, opened the transmission, and once again the holographic image of High Counselor Tax Dravak appeared, his reptilian eyes narrowing as he regarded Alexis. Captain Morrow, Dravak's voice was smooth, though there was an edge of tension now. I trust you've had time to consider our offer. We understand your position, and we are willing to adjust the terms accordingly. Alexis crossed her arms, her eyes cold. And what are those adjustments you're offering, Counselor? Dravak's lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. We propose a new arrangement. Humanity's military will remain intact, but there will be oversight to ensure your forces do not destabilize the region. Additionally, we are willing to share advanced technology and resources to help you integrate into the Council's broader defense network. The offer was tantalizing, but Alexis wasn't about to fall for it. This wasn't about peace, it was about control. The Council was trying to lure them back into submission with promises of tech and resources. She'd seen their tricks before. And what do you gain from this, Counselor? Alexis's voice was low and controlled. Why offer us so much now? You and your allies are clearly strong enough to act without us. What's the catch? Dravak's eyes flashed, and for a moment, his composure cracked. The catch, Captain, is that the galaxy is not as stable as you think. There are forces beyond our control rising in the shadows, forces that threaten us all. If humanity is to be part of this new order, you must join us. Your strength is undeniable, but your lack of unity could bring about your undoing. Alexis's mind raced. The mention of forces rising in the shadows wasn't a threat, it was a warning. The Zorathians knew something, and they were trying to bait humanity into playing their part in whatever came next. "I don't trust you, Counselor," Alexis said bluntly. "And I don't trust your terms. This is a thinly veiled attempt to control us, to put humanity under your thumb while you set the galaxy on fire." Dravak's smile tightened, but he did not lose his cool. "You are free to refuse. But be warned, Captain Morrow, you do not know the true nature of the storm brewing beyond the Council's borders." "I'll take my chances," Alexis replied, her voice steady. "Humanity doesn't bow, Counselor. Not to you, not to anyone." The hologram flickered, the image of Dravak vanishing as the transmission ended. The bridge was silent once again. For a long moment, Alexis stood still, her gaze locked on the dark expanse of space outside. The stakes were higher than ever. The Zorathians had just shown their true cards. They weren't just seeking control of humanity, they were trying to unify the galaxy against a greater threat. The pieces were shifting, and humanity's role in the upcoming conflict was still unclear. "Captain," Lieutenant Nova's voice broke through her thoughts, her expression tight. "We've received a coded transmission from the Arctalians. They're offering a military alliance." The words hit harder than Alexis expected. An alliance with the Arctalians could tilt the balance of power in humanity's favor, but it also meant aligning with an empire that had its own ambitions. The Arctalians had never been known for their generosity. They wanted something, and it was likely a high price. "What's their proposal?" Alexis asked, already knowing she'd have to make a decision quickly. "They offer to stand with us in the event of conflict, Captain," Nova replied. "But in return, they ask for access to our military technology and strategic resources." Alexis exhaled sharply. It was a tempting offer. The Arctalians had the strength to back up their words, but at what cost? Was humanity willing to play into their hands, even if it meant securing a stronger foothold in the galactic arena? "We'll take it," Alexis said finally. "But we'll do so on our terms. We'll give them nothing unless we know they're truly committed. Make sure the fleet is ready. We'll need to act fast." The crew's activity picked up as orders were relayed. Alexis stood, watching the stars once again, her mind a whirlwind of calculations. The galaxy was hurtling toward a conflict, one that would define the future of humanity. The Zorathians had played their hand, and the Arctalians had shown their interest. But no matter who else entered the fray, Alexis knew one thing for sure: humanity was no longer a bystander. They were going to fight for their place, and if the galaxy wasn't ready for that, it would have to adjust. "We're done being controlled," Alexis whispered to herself, her resolve hardening. "This is just the beginning."